Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's program, Achieving Excellence in CX with AI and Omnichannel Quality Management Throughout the Customer Journey. My name is Alba Shah. I'm the Global Vice President of Digital Transformation with Frost & Sullivan. Today, I will start by sharing some Frost & Sullivan findings related to this topic, and then we'll be moderating a lively discussion with Ted Hunting of Bright Pattern, and we'll conclude with an audience Q&A. Today's program is designed to be interactive between you and the panelists, so you may participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the presentation and the panel discussion. Just type your question into the Q&A text box in the left-hand side of your screen. You can enlarge the slides at any time by clicking on the diagonal arrows located on the upper right side of the slides. The slides will advance automatically throughout the program. If you happen to experience any problems with the program, press 5 on your keyboard to refresh your screen, or close and relaunch the program. You can also visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the help widget on the right top right, or simply kind of submit the help question using the Q&A interface. We will also be posting polling questions during my presentation, and they will appear in the slide area. So to answer a polling question, select the radio button that corresponds with your answer, and then click the Submit button. Today's program will also be available within 24 hours, and you can find it by visiting www.frost.com/excellenceincx. Please do share this program with your colleagues and anyone who would be interested. And also, we will be live tweeting during today's webinar, so if you want to follow, the Twitter handle is @FS_events. Once again, @FS_events. Okay. Let's take a moment to walk through today's agenda items. We'll cover how you can achieve excellence in CX utilizing artificial intelligence and quality management solutions. We'll also teach you how you can implement innovative technology to see an immediate impact on customer experience and ROI. The key takeaways from the webinar include how to gain an immediate customer experience impact with artificial intelligence in your contact center, how to get started with effortless, personal, omnichannel conversations, how to measure the quality of every interaction on every channel, and lastly, you'll learn some best practices from innovative companies. Before we start, I'd like to introduce you to today's panelist, Ted Hunting, Senior Vice President of Marketing from Bright Pattern. I'm so looking forward to a great conversation with Ted.
Hey, great. Thanks, Alba.
Awesome, Ted. We can get started. So I thought we would begin with a look at top business goals for the next 2 years. Last year, we surveyed IT decision makers across all of the major sectors. While customer satisfaction and experience have always been a top priority, CX rose to the top of corporate goals for the first time. Now, with COVID, this was done pre-COVID, so there may be a little bit of delay because clearly there are some other more urgent matters that contact centers are dealing with, but we definitely feel that CX is going to be continuing to be top. But in order to deliver an excellent customer experience, of course, we need to understand what customers want. They want the ability to use any device on any channel at any time they wish. They want to be handled quickly, but in a customized fashion. And they want the agents to know their preferences and anticipate their needs. Yep, they are quite demanding. The best way to achieve all of this is to provide omnichannel service from seamlessly integrated automated systems that use AI and analytics through well-trained agents who provide a personalized experience. While customers expect seamless communications with businesses, only 4% of contact centers have fully integrated their interaction channels. Obviously, that's a really low number. The challenges they cite include difficulties of systems integration, and silos within the organization. We're finding that fully integrating mobile devices with other contact center channels is a top priority. Now, the good news is that companies are actually investing in IT to enhance CX to meet their corporate goals. And the other two drivers here, improving digital presence and sales and marketing effectiveness, are also part of providing an omnichannel experience. 2022, we expect that the majority of contact centers will have deployed chatbots. Other big investments will include messaging bots and virtual assistants. AI will allow for automation of more complex tasks, but will not substantially replace humans. On the contrary, we believe that live agents will build relationships with customers and improve loyalty. Now, among those who are unable to provide a seamless omnichannel experience, systems integrations issues and channel silos are cited as the main reasons for a lack of interaction channel integration. And I would like to wrap up before I start talking with Ted. It's clear that companies are interested in making sure that their customer care features are available on mobile devices and compatible with all of their other contact channels. I guess this is not exactly shocking news since anyone over the age of 10 uses their smartphones for just about everything. So Ted, I have my first question for you. Our research shows that AI will be prevalent in customer care by 2022. At the same time, the number of voice calls and average talk times continue to increase or stay the same for most contact centers. What are your thoughts on the robots versus human trend? What do you think are some of the immediate impacts of AI implementations in contact centers?
So great question. I think a lot of people are talking about AI, and there's a lot of people who are wondering how to get started. I think from an immediate impact standpoint, one of the first things I think is really good to highlight is this concept of external facing AI. So I think in your stats, Alpha, you had mentioned bots, for example, are actually going to double in the next 2 years. But I think one of the problems with a lot of the bots is there's another stat that I had read that 90% of the bots deployed last year will be taken out because of poor CSAT. So I think one of the keys is to really have the bots and the humans work as one. And here's a great example in this picture. You might start, could be on a mobile device, as you mentioned, maybe chatting with a bot. And the bot is very good at doing the basic triage, so gathering the basic information. And then once the basic information has been collected and gathered, then you can bring in a human, and the human person can then help out the interaction. So rather than this argument of bots versus humans, it's really letting different resources do what they do best. So this idea of external facing AI is one area that can be very helpful. But it's interesting, I did a workshop last year, and we found a lot of larger enterprises in particular were hesitant to turn on the bots because of the concerns over customer satisfaction. So another thing that we really are seeing is really probably the first step that many companies are taking is this idea of AI agent assist, where AI can help the agents. And a good example is here we have a chat where someone's maybe saying, hey, I'd love to go to Maui someday. And then the AI in the chat channel provides some recommendations. So this is a key area it can help. And the same assistance can occur not only on the chat channel, but it could also occur on the SMS channel, could occur on the phone or the email, or even a messenger channel like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, whatever it may be. So that's another key area. And then another thing that's really key as well where AI can help is here's an example of sentiment. AI can monitor sentiment on every single channel. So if the agent's actually is able to see the sentiment of the customer, is able to get some suggested responses, these are some key areas where AI can help. And then finally, one other AI area that we're seeing is very hot right now is this idea of a conversational IVR. So if you ask most people, they love self-service. Everybody wants self-service, but if you ask people how many people love your IVR, virtually no one will raise their hand. And this idea of a conversational IVR where you can speak freely and be routed based on the natural language processing, be routed to the right resource without having to listen through a long tree of hit number 6, number 89, whatever it may be. That's another key one. So just to summarize, AI can help externally through like conversational IVRs or bots. But what I think is probably the best way to get started more conservatively is to really start with AI helping agents.
I'm thinking of Seinfeld's Kramer. I don't know if anyone remembers the episode where
movie phone.
Yes, yes. So it is amazing how AI can be used internally to help agents perform better. And at Frost & Sullivan, we're doing a lot of research around employee satisfaction, and it really helps to improve their function, but also bring joy to their jobs. And then with COVID, we're definitely seeing self-service just being accelerated. And the best way to do that is moving away from the old IVR stuff and using AI to really deliver excellent customer experience. I have a question for the audience. You should see the first polling question pop up on your screen. Simply use your mouse to click on the answer that best suits your opinion, and please take a moment to respond. So the first question I have is, how do you plan to use artificial intelligence in your contact center? And you can select all that apply, and I'll wait a moment before I give you the results.
A lot of people aren't sure. Hopefully after the webinar, they will have a better idea so far.
Yeah.
So interesting, okay.
Interesting.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, for a moment I was like, wow.
Yeah. right on your trend, Alpha, you were talking about, like the doubling of bots, and there's even numbers are going up as we speak.
Isn't that amazing? It feels good when my numbers line up with what's still going on a few months later. So look at that.
And it's interesting too, because we were just talking about the AI to help agents and AI to external and internal, and we're seeing some of the breakdown here in the audience. Interesting. Great.
Yeah.
And then hopefully all the people in the audience can see as well.
I know you and I, yeah, I hope so. I'm sure they can. So bots came out as number 1, as I guess predicted. Agent assistance, which I think is fabulous. Conversational AI. There's some good stuff here. Exciting. Okay, so Ted, back to you. My second question for you. What steps should companies take to transform digitally such that they can deliver an omni-channel journey? We know that those terms are they mean a lot to you. So we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Okay. So to start, I think really what's key is this idea of really communicating digitally on channels of today and tomorrow. I actually was leading a workshop at Facebook's headquarters a little over a year ago, and there was a person from Google, and one of her biggest fears were the new channels, because new channels emerge, and then you might think you have a couple of channels connected, but they're not working together. So I think obviously the traditional channels are very important, but also the emerging channels, like the messengers and things like that. Even in your stat, Alpha, I noticed you saw that messengers were going, I think, from like 19% of companies to almost 60% or 55%, actually, I'm just looking back at my notes. So we're seeing a lot, especially outside the United States, a lot with messengers. So whether it's like Facebook Messenger, we have a customer in South Africa who's using that, or WhatsApp is really big in Latin America and Asia in particular. So having really the ability to communicate on the different channels. And then you'd mentioned mobile, having the ability to communicate in a mobile environment. Like over on the picture on the right, you might have somebody chatting with you, and you might want to be able to share a ticket. You might want to be able to share a map with directions. So having the ability to do that through text messages or even within the app is really key. Like where you might have an app where you can actually do a chat or do a video chat within the app. And I'll talk more about a customer that's doing that in a pretty innovative way right now. So essentially, I think the first key is make sure you're ready for the channels that are coming, because they're already here.
I want to say that it's
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Back to you.
No, go ahead, please. I was just going to say that it's interesting. I was going to say that it's a millennial kind of or a younger generation kind of thing, but I have to admit my dad introduced me to WhatsApp years ago, and now I use it to connect with cousins, but I also use it to talk to my colleagues in Asia. So it's interesting. It could be it's across generations. Go ahead.
we're seeing it as a huge, especially in Latin America and also in parts of Asia, it's like a must. And then even in Korea, they have Kakao Talk. It's one of their messaging apps. That's really key there as well. So I think, you know, just as parts of Asia were initially far ahead of the U.S. In the mobile world many years ago, I think we're seeing that with some of the new channels as well. So, but anyway, back to the keys here a little bit as well for this seamless, effortless omnichannel. I think the other key is people have been talking about omnichannel for years, and it's just amazing that only 4% of companies are still delivering it. That stat just still boggles my mind. And I think, yeah, and I think part of the key is I even heard from a major hotel firm who they said they had 11 desktops, and there's no way an agent can offer a seamless, effortless conversation to their customers with multiple desktops. So I think one of the keys is seeing the entire journey. So that's like seeing each step in the journey. So here on the right is just a quick example where someone is maybe, there's some SMSs that are occurring, and then the agent is able to see through a chat that maybe occurs later what is happening. So having the ability for the agent in a single unified desktop to see each step in the customer journey is key. It really makes it much easier for the agent so things aren't repeated, and it also makes it much easier for the customer. And this goes back, of course, to the channels, like including like the bots. You might want to make sure that if there's a bot conversation, that's visible on the desktop as well. So when that context is then transferred to the agent can see specifically what the conversation with the bot was. So having that ability on all the channels that we just talked about is really key. Another key point here is, let's see if the slide is, I'm not able to advance the slide. Alpha, are you able to advance the slide?
I am not, but I think so.
Okay, it looks like it's working again. There we go.
I'm going to blame it on Zoom. I imagine that everybody has Zoom, others in the family using Zoom at the same time, so bandwidth is an issue.
Great. So we'll just let it go here. But basically the key is, we don't need the slide to talk about it, but effectively also having the ability to hop between channels. So if you look, for example, in the lower right of the screen, or actually in the middle of the screen, here you can see an agent is actually able to jump from a chat channel to another channel like SMS or Facebook or Line, whatever it may be. So having the ability for agents to jump between channels is also key as well. So essentially the biggest key, and one thing not to be overemphasized, is really the single unified desktop. That's really key to making the journey very easy.
It's huge. There's so much, and we could talk about that for days, but there's so much value in providing a unified viewpoint for the agents. It's huge. So I want to ask another question to our audience, if you're ready. How omnichannel are you? And the choices are: agents can see every step in a customer's journey on all channels. Agents can see one channel, or two channels, or three channels. I am looking forward to seeing the answer to this one.
Penelope, this will be an interesting one to see, because I think you showed in your numbers around 4% of companies can actually see every channel on every interaction on every channel.
Yeah.
So 20% for every channel. That's pretty good. That's definitely on the hot. So we must have smarter companies here than they're ahead of the pack
in our audience. Totally.
Exactly. Yep.
Definitely more diversity here.
And it looks like most people can see two channels, or at least the highest percentage anyway. Interesting.
As an analyst, I'm of course curious as to, I wish I could ask a question right now, but I kind of wish I knew which channels. And I'm going to guess voice and chat, but. Okay, that gives us an idea of where the numbers lie, and it looks like it's across the board. And in fact, like you said, if you take 17 plus 3 channels, it's quite a bit as well. It's almost 30% are pretty well integrated. It's pretty good. All right, Ted. Back to you, Ted. My next question for you. How can companies measure the quality of every interaction on every channel? And being that many companies have silos, certainly ours does, and we're working on it, it would be great if you could take a moment to talk about integration issues, because in one of my slides before, we saw that that was a major issue for companies.
This is a great question, because even in your initial slide, you had some, the number one priority is to really improve the customer experience. But what's interesting is companies, as we saw, they're really struggling to have that seamless, continuous conversation across channels with, only 4% or in the audience here, almost 17%. But what's really equally amazing when you look at, there's omnichannel conversations, and then there's measuring the omnichannel conversation. And if you look at, this was from a survey that we actually did at the end of last year, but it was very interesting. And what we actually asked people throughout the world is, what channels do you measure quality? And virtually everybody, around 89%, measured the voice channel, but most of the other channels are not measured for quality, especially the new emerging channels like bots and so forth. And everyone complains about bots, but look what a small percentage of companies actually measure the interactions on bots. But what's even more interesting is, even though the voice channel is measured, most companies will only measure about 1% of the interaction. So the reality is over 99% of interactions are not measured for quality, which, if you think about it, it's pretty astounding. If a great customer experience is so important, that you can't improve what you can't measure. So this sampling approach that's being used is really, really, I find it to be a huge opportunity. And the nice thing is AI provides a great solution here. So for example, one of the first things to look at is what I call micro-level quality management. And this is the ability where you can actually, you can have AI automatically grade for sentiment every single interaction. So in the example below on the left, you can actually see some different channels or some interactions like a voice and a chat and an email and so forth. And you can actually have AI grade every interaction for sentiment. And then you can also, in a very simple way, almost like a Lyft or an Uber kind of survey where you hit 1 to 5 stars, a very simple, low effort what I call a breadcrumb survey, you can actually use that to also gauge the quality of an interaction like NPS or CSAT, which is reflected on the right. So you can have a passive measurement like sentiment using AI, or you can do a simple breadcrumb survey. And then what's interesting then is, for a supervisor, he or she can then take a given interaction, and if they see the sentiment is low, they can pull up the recording of the interaction. It could be a web chat, it could be a conversation over text message, or of course a voice call. Listen to the interaction and then grade and coach the agent to improve that interaction. So the first thing is this idea of micro-level quality management. And then the other thing that's really key here is, we hear a lot, I've heard this phrase used by Frost and Sullivan, some of the analysts from your team, Elpa, this idea of in the moment, acting in the moment. And I actually learned this concept from a very innovative startup here in the Bay Area, where when they get a really low response, they immediately route that interaction on a survey to a customer retention specialist. So what you can also do is you can actually have a workflow set up. And for example, in this example in the lower right, if the sentiment is low, set priority to a very high level, find an agent with the skill set retention specialist and route that interaction to that person. So the concept here is that you can actually route a low sentiment interaction immediately to a retention specialist, so you don't lose that customer. So this idea of what I call micro-level quality management, where AI can see what's happening and then can take action automatically with the low sentiment, is one way you can improve at the micro level. Okay, so that's sort of the micro view. Another cool area is this area that I call macro level quality management. So if you have AI monitoring everything, you can then start to see, for example, on the left, we've got an omnichannel quality management channel dashboard, and you can actually see the interactions by your different channels, whether it's bot chat, human chat, voice, and so forth. And then you can actually cumulatively collect the information and see the sentiment by channel. So if you suddenly see that a given channel has low sentiment, And by the way, the little part on the radial dial is from a breadcrumb survey, so you could actually see it actively or passively. So this ability to see sentiment on every channel is really key. And then you can also do it then by journey type. So if you know, for example, if you're a bank and you're talking about mortgages or credit card or home equity line of credit, whatever it may be, you can actually gauge sentiment by the journey type. And you could also even do it by customer segment or even, you know, agent pool. You might want to look at your at-home agents versus how they're doing in Omaha, for example. So this macro level quality management is another area that we see is really a key way to really improve the customer experience and measure it.
This is awesome because one of the key ways to differentiate would be to allow a customer to reach the right agent with the information that they need to really help deliver that experience that the customer wants, right? And
absolutely
understanding what the sentiment is, and that's something that's another way to differentiate, understanding, and then being able to do it by channel, by journey type. You can really analyze where things have gone wrong, and often maybe the agent or something else is blamed, but if you really understand where it's coming from, then you might understand what the root cause really is, right?
Exactly. I think we're still very much in a reactive mode, and I see that we're going to really, this is huge of what I see coming. One of the things I see coming next is using AI to really monitor the channels and the journeys. Yep. Right.
And I'm going to bring COVID back in for a little bit as we move more and more, kind of accelerate towards self-service. You have to imagine that companies really have to look at really kind of checking on the quality across the board, not just voice or what they used to. So that's going to become even more important.
Exactly. And then even having the ability, like where you see low sentiment, where you can help agents at home, they might be remote agents, and having the ability for agents who might be remote communicate internally, like if you have internal messaging within your contact center capability, or you maybe are using like a Slack or a Microsoft Teams, for example, is very important too. So agents can help agents.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I have one last question for our audience. Which channels do you measure quality on? Voice only, 2 channels, 3 channels, or all channels? And we're talking about quality here. And now I'll go checking on the results.
Now we're going to see how good our survey was that we did. This is only interesting. Voice only so far. Well, all channels, but we just have a few responses so far. That's really good, though. I'd like to talk to the companies that are doing all channels. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Interesting. So we have some early adopters here on our call.
Yeah, and what I'm also, I'll make a hypothesis up. I'm also, I think the title of this was very much omni-channel quality management focus. So I'm guessing we got some people who really know their stuff who signed up today, which is really great to see. I wish we could open it up to them to let them share some of the things they're doing. This is really good.
Yes.
Ahead of the pack.
That would be a good feature for a future webinar. Okay, so it looks like really quite a number use all. I'd say almost like 50% use more than 3 channels. Good stuff. All right. We have one last question. I have 2 more questions for Ted, and then we can actually get to the audience for questions. What are some of the other pitfalls you think companies face when going through a digital transformation, especially around CX? And so my role kind of is double. It's a double role. I manage the CX team, but I'm also looking at digital transformation across industries. And so the 2 tied are really fun for me, but also knowing that CX is a top priority within that digital transformation strategy, it's awesome. But I'd love to hear from you what you think the pitfalls are.
Okay, great. So my first one, this is actually an idea that I shared at a CX event in New York City couple of years ago, and to me, it's still key. I thought it was going to go by the wayside, but I still see it as really the most important. And I call it the 80-20 rule. So many people, they hear omnichannel and they're, everyone's been talking about it for years. And as we saw, only like 4% of companies are doing it, or closer to 20% of the audience here today. And I think a lot of times companies try to boil the ocean. They see these types of pictures, brick and mortar and kiosks and everything under the sun. And I think the best way to get started is first, get your top 2 channels working as one. And we saw that in the survey response earlier, that most of the respondents had 2 channels working together. And you had mentioned, Alpha, you thought it was probably voice and chat, which is spot on, I think spot on. But that's really the first piece of advice, is getting your top 2 channels that maybe account for 80% of your actions working as one. And we've typically seen that to be the voice and the web chat channel. The exception is some of the more innovative startups who might often use messaging channels. So for example, we just did an announcement yesterday. It's a company, it's a smart lock that sits inside your lock so you don't even see it, started by a bunch of ex-Apple guys. And they're doing things where they want to have like the mobile capability is really key to them. So having video chat's really important to them. But anyway, not to go down off on that tangent, it's typically your website working with your next most important channel, which is typically voice. So that's web chat and voice. And then later, once you got the first 2 working together, you can add the other ones later. So that's sort of the first pitfall on how to get started. So get started, but don't feel like you have to boil the ocean. A few more recommendations. This is one that I mentioned, and I remember I did a talk, and there was the head of customer service from Amazon a couple of years ago, and I mentioned that you need a platform, and whether you build it or you buy it. And he said, Ted, how come you didn't mention this as the first key? And I said, well, as a contact center vendor, I am here to sell the software. I'm not here to sell the software. The last thing I want to do is start with a pitch to buy software. But the key thing is you've got to have a platform, whether you build it or you buy it. It's really key. So I say it late, but I also say it very early. If you really want to break down in these silos that are leading to 4% of companies being able to do this, the 50% of companies mentioning from your research, Alpha, that it's not occurring because of the application issues, having a single platform where you have all the channels native to the platform, they're all inside there, break down the silos makes it very easy. It also gives you that single unified desktop where the agents can see every step in the customer journey. So that's probably the biggest single key recommendation. And then we also talked about omnichannel quality management. A lot of companies, the reason when they look at measuring quality, they have separate bolt-on systems for every channel. They might have a great one for voice, and then they've got another application with a different user interface for another channel. But having all those channels in one platform so you can have an omnichannel conversation and then also measure the quality, I think is really key. And then I think the AI, everyone's ready for AI, but they want to know how to get started. So having the ability where you have AI embedded in the platform, I think is really key as well. And then finally, fast, easy to deploy with minimal PS. The world's changing, and you get your system right, and you feel like it's perfect today, and then a new channel comes along, and you have to add it. That creates issues. So being very nimble is very key. And then a key one right now is this ability to turn on remote workers. And I think we're going to talk about some customers in a moment. We actually just did an announcement today. One of the largest U.S. banks in the country, they turned to us for remote agents when they were having problems with COVID and the loans and everything. And we were able to turn them on in a couple of weeks. Literally the first wave of the agents, 2,000 agents. So having the ability to turn on remote workers quickly, ironically enough, 2 years ago, we were talking about, well, boy, is cloud maybe risky for your business and riskier for your employees? And what we're actually seeing now, which is ironic, is that cloud contact centers are really much safer for your business, much safer for your employees. So I find that to be a really compelling proof point given what we've seen the last couple months. And then organizational, still a huge barrier. I think this is a bigger one. This is one where you might need to have like a very strong CXO, someone who's able to pull the people together from the different business units and break down some of the barriers, because you might have marketing owns the app and someone else owns the website. And so I think, getting people together so you're all literally on the same page, but of course that's a much easier one, much easier said than done. But clearly the technology issues that we had in the past are no longer there. So there's no reason we need to be at the 4%. So that's sort of a quick snapshot. Hopefully not too much of a fire hose of ideas there.
So I feel like customer expectations, everybody feels like customer expectations are off the charts and they are fickle. So quality of interaction we think is really important going forward. But also attending a lot of these our own events and talking to customers, the one thing that always comes up is a key lesson to learn is to start small and find agents that can be champions who can really help others adopt the latest technologies. And with COVID and post-COVID, easy to deploy and use is so critical. So I think that advice you gave is really, really helpful. I have one last question, and I know we want to get to the audience. So can you share an example or two of best practices that have yielded great returns?
Awesome, great. So great question. So Alpha, I like what you just said about, starting small. And I think to me, the key is to always start with particular use cases and what are you trying to do rather than coming up with a grandiose scheme. And a great example is we work with one of the largest healthcare providers here in the U.S. that they're my doctors as well. And, things like you mentioned the importance of mobile and different channels, you need to communicate where customers are. So they're a very good example of one who, whether it's an appointment reminder or your pharmacy pickup is ready, being able to use, mobile, get text messages when things are ready, being able to chat with them. So that's a great example of what I consider one of the most innovative healthcare providers that are using us today. And they're basically making a great patient experience across their different business units. Another one is, we talked about chatbots and we talked about video and mobile and some of these things. We actually there's an innovative startup that actually does some, and I don't use this product, but maybe after being locked inside with COVID for so long, I might need it now. But they do hair, they work primarily with women on hair, and they do hair coloring and things of that sort. And you're able to chat with a bot, and the bot will actually look at you, and they'll make recommendations to order the hair coloring you need. And I obviously haven't experienced this myself, but it's a pretty cool application where they're using actually a chat bot with a video application. It's a little more innovative. Another one that's probably pretty cool is like some of the messenger channels. We actually have a company in South Africa, and they're using a Facebook Messenger coupled with AI that we're integrated with IBM Watson. And if you just actually Facebook message a pizza emoji, they do a database dip, they know who you are, and they send you your favorite pizza. So you think about it, you talk about effortless personal experience. How could it be any easier than sending an emoji to get your pizza? And you probably want to be careful you don't hit that emoji too many times or you might get multiple orders. But I thought that was sort of an innovative one there. What else? Oh, a great example. We did an announcement here this week of a company called Level. There are these ex-Apple guys who have a really cool smart lock. And one of the reasons they wanted to look to us is not just for the omnichannel, but they want to be able to, if someone's out maybe in their garage putting the lock in place, you might want to be able to video chat or share a picture of your problem as you're working with them. So that's like a great example of being able to provide a great customer experience wherever you are, and having that ability with video. And then a few other great examples. This idea of remote. I really want to end with the remote because it's so relevant today. We work with a company, VIP Desk, and they do support for luxury brands like Chanel and so forth. And what's really cool about them is number one, they have an incredible culture with a phenomenal CMO and CEO who really make a huge difference, I think, with the agents, but they also have cutting edge technology, and they're 100% remote. So they actually are able to offer, premium brand support through a remote workforce. And then, having the ability, again, with remote, to turn it on quickly when you need it, like the announcement we did with a bank here in the U.S. Just this week as well. So just to summarize, you can do some great things with mobile channels, with texting, chatbots, things like video, messengers. You might consider them far out in the future, but there's companies who are using them today primarily. We see a lot more of that outside the United States. And then obviously remote is really key, having the ability to be able to review the interactions of your remote agents using some of the omnichannel quality management we mentioned, grade and score and coach them as well. So just a few sound bites of some different examples there.
Well, I feel like remote was something we talked about. I mean, I've been covering this for 25 years, and I feel like all this stuff has been talked about for so long, and sadly, COVID is going to make a lot of these things happen much faster. So it's interesting. Ted, this has been so much fun. Thank you for the good discussion. I want to really
likewise. I wish we weren't remote and we could actually do it live in a panel at one of the great PROS events or something. It'd really be fun to have the audience involved actively as well.
Yeah, I would love that. I think it'd be really fun, and I think it'll happen soon enough. Just have to get through this pandemic, amongst other things. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the audience. We have the first question here. My company uses a premise solution and have been unable to work remotely during the pandemic. Speaking of the pandemic, we have considered a cloud solution, but stopped thinking it would take too long to implement. How long does it typically take? And do you think more companies will move to the cloud or have cloud as a backup solution in case of another crisis? I'm going to hand this over to you, Ted, but definitely we're at Frost & Sullivan, everyone we talk to, people are moving to the cloud faster than ever. But go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, this is a great question. I would say a lot of it depends on your integration. That's really the biggest determinant of time. We found that, for example, we will typically within a few weeks to a month, if the integrations are not significant, we can turn them on very quickly. And we have, obviously like adapters for things like, all the CRMs and so forth. But if you might have like a homegrown database and you need to create some connectors there, it's going to take a little bit longer. But a lot of it depends on what channels you want to integrate and what you're looking to do. For example, this bank here in the United States, that we literally within 2 weeks of them deciding they needed remote agents because they weren't able to service loans with the COVID situation, we had the first almost 2,000 agents turned on within 2 weeks, and we're looking at the next wave now. So it can be as short as that, and actually for a large company, that's very unusual, I should mention. It can be as short of a time as 2 weeks, but it can also be a month. So I think cloud is clearly the safer, it can be a safer approach, and it gives you so much flexibility and nimbleness, in terms of like the ability to turn on other channels and things like that. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does, and I'm completely aligned with your thinking. Or at least my team is. We're seeing out for all those reasons. Cloud is definitely taking off. Folks in the audience, please feel free to ask questions. We'll take as many as we can in our time frame, so please feel free to ask any questions you might have. Here's another one. If you had to identify the single most important approach to make omnichannel conversations possible and to manage the quality of the interactions, what would you recommend?
Okay, so for the first part, I would say what I think is really key to breaking down the silos is having your channels in a platform, again, whether you build it yourself or you buy it from a vendor. And I'm not here to recommend any platforms or anything like that, but that's really, to me, is the single biggest key, because the minute you do that, the minute you have the channels native to your platform versus bolt-on, you don't have separate channels to provision and manage. They're in one platform. And then the minute they're all in one platform, then the agent can see every single step in the journey that we talked about, every interaction on every channel. So it makes it easier for the agent, which if you make it easier for the agent, you make it easier and more effortless for the customer as well. So having it in a single platform where you have the omnichannel conversation capability in a platform, as well as having the omnichannel quality management, not in silos again, but in a single platform, to me, that is the quickest way to offer omnichannel conversations, make it seamless, effortless, measure those interactions, and then obviously be able to do it very quickly and easily. And then by having it together in a platform, as those new channels emerge, which they certainly will, who knows what we're going to see in the next few years, you'll be future-proof and ready for the next go. And then obviously cloud, going back to remote again, makes it very easy for you to then turn on those agents wherever you may need them, which we're now seeing is more and more is remote and at home.
Thank you. I think you kind of answered this already, but maybe go a little bit more in depth. For companies interested in AI but not sure where to start, what would you recommend?
I think, let's see, so the first question I'd probably ask is I'd want to understand a little bit more about their business and what they want to accomplish. But at a more generic level, I think the AI for agent assistance is a really safe way to get started, because I think there's a lot of people who are hesitant to deploy bots. And I think, starting with AI for agent assistance, where, you can maybe have a chat or a text message and the agent has, through a knowledge base or through AI, is provided some recommendations, is really a great way to get started. And then I think also just having the sentiment to be able to measure what is happening that we discussed earlier. I think that's another great way to get started with AI.
I agree with you, Ted. I feel like the thought of the ability to help the agent do their jobs better as more and more of the easy stuff gets pushed down to self-service, and hopefully they are handled really well. Helping the agent do their jobs better and really help develop that customer loyalty is going to be really important. I mean, I know customers, myself included, are definitely more flexible right now and are letting things go when you have the companies that you like to work with as a customer, like Nordstrom, for example. But soon that's not going to happen anymore. People are going to go back to being really demanding, and that ability not just to help the agents perform better, but I really think that agent retention is important. And if you're able to deliver information to them, making their jobs easier, and then helping them develop a relationship with the customer, they are going to be more satisfied and stay on longer. So there's so many more benefits to that.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then it also, I think, makes the agents feel more valuable to the customers. Like, for example, so much of AI can be used to triage and gather the basic information. So we had actually a customer in Asia, and they had a very large number of languages. And in that case, we used Google AI integrated with our platform. They were able basically to analyze the emails and route the emails based on the language skill set to the right agent to handle. So AI can be used, depending on the use case, it can be used to do things like maybe analyze an email interaction and route it to the person with a language skill set. It can be used to provide recommendations. So I think a lot of it depends on the use cases of the particular company, but AI clearly can offer immediate ROI today. It's just a matter of identifying what the most important needs are, and then starting from there and working backwards.
Awesome. I'm just checking to see if there's any more questions. I'm going to ask you one more from the audience. 1 second. Okay, so this is a question. How big a role do you see CDP's integration in helping facilitate the quality and transfer of data between contact center tools, chatbots, CRMs, and independent franchise owners to promote the best customer UX, unified experience, I guess?
So can you repeat again? I want to make sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah. How big a role do you see CDP's integration in helping facilitate the quality and transfer of data between call center, tools, chatbots, CRMs, and independent franchise owners to promote best customer experience? Unified experience.
So I think the more integrated the systems are, that's really key, because if you don't have customer data from a CRM, and that information is connected to your contact center platform, so you can then route a gold customer to a gold agent, for example, or having the ability for when that customer calls or chat to dip into the CRM via that integration to pull up previous purchase history. So I think the more integration, it's only going to help make things more effortless and personal, because number one, if the agent has to go off, and we've all experienced it, and look up data and go to another interface, another screen, another system to pull data. So I think in general, the more integration we have, it's going to help everybody succeed, whether it's the agent, and whether it's like breaking down the silos is what it's all about. We've been talking omnichannel for years, and so few companies are able to do it. The more integrated we are, the more these systems are connected and talk to each other, the better the customer experience will be. So hopefully that answers the question.
I hope so too. Otherwise, we can always reach out to the audience member. I wholeheartedly agree, and I feel like it's a strategy from the top that's got to happen. And it's part of any digital transformation strategy. It can't just be about the technology. It really has to be about the people too that are involved in it. And the only way to adopt is to make it seamless, right, and effortless. So I agree. I think we're going to wrap. Thank you. So if you have more questions, we're happy to answer them. Feel free to go ahead and ask in the question and answer box. And
a huge thank you to everybody out there.
Yeah.
It's really been good conversation, and Alpha, thanks for all the great research, and hopefully the audience here got some good ideas, and I wish we're all together, not remote, but in a room, and we could follow it up with some roundtable discussion, but really good discussion today. Appreciate the time the opportunity to join.
Totally fun. Thank you so much, Ted, for joining. Really appreciate it from Frost & Sullivan's side. If anyone submitted a question that we didn't answer, we will follow up with you shortly. If you missed any part of this webinar or want to share it with others, we do have an on-demand version, and it's going to be available on at www.frost.com/excellence-in-CX. After the program is concluded, you'll be asked to participate in a brief survey, and we'd really love for you to take it. The survey will appear in the center of your screen, so please stay on and take that survey. And thank you so much again for participating. I hope you have a great afternoon.